Hey, it's Jim Csek with Kelowna Now, and here with the Bitcoin Show, sponsored by Block Rewards. I have with me Scott Dedels, and we're got a jam-packed show of goodness and stuff that you get to use it. We're going to finally figure out how to use it, right?
We are going to be talking a little bit about how to spend some Bitcoin today, yeah.
That's awesome. That's one of the things that I was kind of like most interested in, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this on the drive over. It's a funny part about Bitcoin and wanting to spend Bitcoin. And there's sort of three core jobs of money, and one of them is medium of exchange, which is spending, store of value,
which is what everybody kind of has been doing with Bitcoin. Right?
Yes, yeah.
And a lot of people wouldn't spend it if their life depended on it.
That's right. And then the third one is a unit of account. And people are already using Bitcoin as a unit of account. It's easy to start thinking about what things cost in Bitcoin when you start saving in Bitcoin.
Right.
The funny thing about complaining about Bitcoin's use as a medium of exchange is the reverse. Seldomly do people complain about the Canadian dollar's function as a store of value. And I can say, if we're comparing the two, Bitcoin is a way more useful medium of exchange than the Canadian dollar is as a store of value. And
there's no argument for me on that one.
This is the reason why we're talking about other
again, we
forms
can
of
use
money in the first
tons of
place.
Examples and say, if you put, again, you can test this out yourself at home. You can take $10,000, put it in a sock or whatever you want to put it in, and put it underneath your mattress, hide it wherever you want.
And wait.
And wait 10 years, dig it out, and you'll prove it to yourself.
Yeah. 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 So, but it is important, and there are some really cool innovations happening in terms of thinking about how you can go about spending Bitcoin. So we're going to cover some of that.
Awesome.
And it's worth talking a little bit about how the Bitcoin blockchain works, and that's sort of our first slide today. Firstly, Bitcoin is an innovation in it that it's what's called peer-to-peer money. So when you make a transaction, it's two Bitcoin wallets transacting directly with each other. And in our current system,
so that's the top is the bank on top there. Or
the top line is the current system of how it works. So if I wanted to actually send you money through an e-transfer today, I don't send money to you directly. I send it to the bank. It goes through some sort of a payments processor or a middleman like PayPal. And then at that point, it will go to your institution, and then it'll end up in your bank. And it's fast, but there is a whole bunch of stuff that happens in the middle.
Right.
And with a Bitcoin transaction, it really, truly is one wallet to another. And this is part of what makes Bitcoin unstoppable, because there isn't any intermediary that's responsible for validating the
nobody
payment.
Taking a cut off of every transaction.
There's also nobody taking a cut. Yeah. So Bitcoin's referred to as uncensorable money, and I think it's an important point to make when we're talking about the benefits of spending Bitcoin. One of the biggest benefits of spending Bitcoin is that nobody can prevent you from spending it. And that's something that not everybody cares about all the time, but it's a feature and a function of Bitcoin that I think is going to become more valuable as people start to be more aware that our ability to spend our own money is starting to be eroded.
Well, I know that there's some people, like we've seen some TikToks and stuff where people go to the bank, like a Canadian bank, and ask to take out some money, and they're just like, no, what are you going to do with it? And so there's some videos of people trying to take $10,000 in the bank, not really wanting to give it to them.
Saying no, yeah.
Yeah, because they're saying you got to have a use for it. And then one guy went in there and said, I have a gambling habit. I just want my money.
Yeah. I've seen some crazy answers, and they'll still say no. With Bitcoin, the money is actually in your wallet. So you are the custodian of your own assets, so you're free to send them to any other wallet, and this is why it's sort of like people will also call Bitcoin freedom money, because the premise is if you own it. I mean, if you think about the reverse, if you're sending money to a bank and they don't have your money and you're not allowed to have it whenever you want it, what do you really have?
That one is puzzling me. Like I'm not sure why institutions aren't allowing people to take their money. Like, because isn't it theirs to take? I'm actually going to reach out and get somebody in from a bank, and I'm going to ask a question, because it doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I think the honest answer is they don't have the capital reserves to So basically, the way fractional reserve lending works out, it's legal to sort of lend out at least $10 for every dollar that a bank receives on deposit. Yep. And so that can actually happen an infinite number of times. So if a bank gets $10 on deposit, that means that they can loan out 100.
Yep.
And then if 100 comes back in, then they can loan out 1,000. Like, right. This thing It's levered up. There's so much leverage. And actually, I should have
But it
brought
shouldn't
that.
stop the odd guy goes in there and says, "Hey, I'd
Agreed.
like to take 10 grand out," and then being read answer these questions first. Just like, why?
Yeah.
I didn't ask you to answer any questions when I dropped it off, right? When you deposit money, it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah, it should be in the terms of service agreement. That's for sure.
it's weird for sure.
So there are some drawbacks with the Bitcoin network. It's not perfect. And one of them is when we're basically inscripting all of these transactions onto a visible ledger that anyone in the world can see. And that process is, if it's happening globally on a distributed network across all these computers, it's going to be probably slower than a centralized database that's basically like Visa, as an example, sort of like running an internal database. That it's going to be much faster than something that's decentralized.
Because we know that when we tap, it takes literally like a millisecond.
Yeah.
Right?
And so Visa's transaction throughput, I think it says 65,000 transactions per second. And the Bitcoin network is capable of 7 transactions a second. So this is a known limitation of what Bitcoin can do, and sort of detractors will say, well, this is obvious why Bitcoin is never going to be the world's money, because it can handle.
Well, that would bog down in a hurry.
Yeah, totally. So the Lightning Network is an innovation that sprung up organically. Again, Bitcoin's not a company; it's just a community, and it was proposed, I think, in 2016, and people have been working on it ever since. And it's sort of like a settlement layer that exists on top of Bitcoin, what's called a layer 2. So if you want to show the next one, on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's kind of block by block, and everything that happens gets added to the ledger. And so it's like kids being added to Santa's list. You can see them all. It's all in order. It's a linear thing, one block after another. And what the Lightning Network does is it's kind of like how paper notes evolved out of gold. It was slow to move gold, and difficult.
It's like an IOU.
Yeah. So instead of inscribing every single transaction to the Bitcoin blockchain, the Lightning Network exists on top of it, and people can sort of pass IOUs back and forth to each other. And then at some point, what's called a payment channel is closed,
or a settlement date, or whatever you want to call it.
And it becomes one transaction that could be thousands.
Right, so they just have basically like a batch entry.
Yeah. So the Lightning Network is growing in adoption a lot because it's super functional, very fast, sort of unlimitedly scalable. It's also not perfect, but this is an example of something that people... Because the other thing I didn't mention is Bitcoin blocks confirm roughly every 10 minutes. So if you're running a business that is turning around customers faster than 10 minutes, Bitcoin's on the base blockchain is not ideal, because you wouldn't be able to have confirmed the receipt of your money.
Right.
So say a coffee shop, for example, probably not the best kind of business to be receiving Bitcoin on a base layer transaction basis, because somebody could have left with their coffee already. You wouldn't know if the money came.
So the only wrinkle in there with Lightning or whatever, it's just like the volatility of Bitcoin right now is still fairly high. So like if Bitcoin moves 10% in a day, you'd have more buying power the following day. I'm taking that affects Lightning as well.
Yeah. Right? So on super short terms, for sure. I mean, if you're zooming out, like over a 12-month period, your money would have doubled or more. Yeah. So on the longer time frame, this is the thing. With the volatility argument, like it depends on what time frame you're measuring, because it has had big drawdowns, but it's still the best chart in the history of charts. So
the interesting one that I saw just a few days ago was most of the FTX investors that lost a lot of money are supposedly going to be made whole. Yeah. Or even more than whole. And then I was like, how's that, right? Because it was billions of dollars. But apparently Bitcoin was trading at 16,000 when it crashed. And then so now it's been like 4 times that amount, right? So.
Yeah. So but there's a caveat, because I think what's happening is they'll be made whole in dollars, not in Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. So here's your cash. Go away.
Yeah. So for people who care about Bitcoin, that would be still a pretty big gut punch.
Right. So unless they say, well, I'll convert it, but then, And then somebody said, well, he just has, so he hasn't committed any crimes, but he still has, because at the time he's, did a bunch of things that was wrong.
I mean, the crime that he committed was laundering money for the Democratic Party, right? I think that's pretty...
Well, they would say for both parties, but I think that the amount of money that was exchanged was...
Sure. I mean, there might have been some. There was a lot of money that ended up doing other things than what it was meant to be doing, like being customer funds, for sure.
There was definitely, everybody was living high on that hog.
Yeah.
Right? They were all like, they were at the buffet table. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Including his family.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a short video clip to show the Lightning Network in action, which I think is the best way to do it. And maybe just before we show it, I'll explain it for a little bit of context. Lightning runs on the Lightning addresses would generate a QR code is one way to transact in Lightning. So you're scanning somebody else's QR code. And what this guy in the video is showing is that he doesn't even need to be in person to make this transaction. So he's seen somebody's Lightning address, I think on a YouTube video, pause the screen, and he's going to see if he can send some Lightning sats across just a picture of the internet and see how fast it happens.
When you say sats, those are called satoshis, right?
Yes. So satoshis are the subunit. They're like cents compared to $1. So each Bitcoin is made up of 100 million satoshis.
So lots of flexibility there.
So there's 2.1 quadrillion satoshis.
Nice. And I've got we did that event, so I don't own any Bitcoin yet, but I do own some. I do have some Lightning. It looks impressive because it's
part of a Bitcoin.
It looks impressive. 371,445.
You could hold yours up, and we could see if anyone wants to send you some stats.
Yeah, if you want to fill that up,
you would do this.
Because people, when they came to that event,
you can zap Zim.
There you go.
Jim.
When you came to that event, the event fees were paid by. You could have paid them by Lightning, and you got it cheaper because it was $35 in cash, or $25 in Lightning.
And I think the price is up since then. So it will have actually.
And then that $35 is going to be worth a lot less today.
Yeah, that's right.
After they've spent a lot more on who knows what.
Yeah. Budgets balancing themselves.
Why worry about the economy? It takes care of itself.
Did you see?
We could go on all day.
Did you see the Tiff Macklem quote? I
didn't. What was another good one?
Yeah,
another singer.
Another doozy. He was talking. I think it was Friday or maybe yesterday about pending systemic stress on the existing system because of all of the excess leverage on asset prices, which obviously they had nothing to do with when they told everyone to feel safe about borrowing. Because
we should play that clip over and over. That should be the meme, right? For him, every time he says something, just play that clip over and over and over and over. And the one with
rates will be
our
low
friend
for a very
Justin
long
Trudeau
time.
there saying, I don't worry about the economy. It takes care of itself.
Yeah. Not really a numbers guy.
And I don't read the reports.
Maybe we'll show the clip.
I'm watching Joe Nakamoto's Bitcoin Akasi video. It's his last YouTube video. Check it out. But he's at the nonprofit Surfer Kids, where kids can come down, surf, and they get some meals as well. And they all have Bolt cards. They've just shown a Bolt card on the screen with a receive QR code. And so I'm going to see if I can send that kid some sats through this video. Let's see if it works. So all the kids have these cards. If you scan that. All right, I think that should be clear enough. So we go 50,000 sats, scan 50,000 sats. Hello from Gandalf in Dubai. Please work, please work, please work, please work. There we go. Awesome. So yeah, that's it. Sent money through the computer screen through a random YouTube video. Can you do that with USD? I don't think so. Shout out Canadian Bitcoiners.
Yeah, I don't. Last time I've tried to wire money overseas, it didn't happen that fast.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's that premise that going back to the start of the difference between when you're transacting in money that is directly person to person. In the Lightning case, there's a few more steps in the middle, but nothing like the legacy way that has really evolved out of bank, hundreds of years of banking and just being bolting on.
So is there limits on how much you can send in Lightning, or is it just how many zeros you can punch in there?
So the Lightning works on something called channels. And so you can either open your own channel, which then you can send whatever's in the channel, or you can sort of hop into channels that are being maintained. So the limitation with amounts right now is the amount of liquidity that is in the channel. So you're not able to send more than is there.
Okay.
The volume of liquidity is an issue because this is the thing. So Lightning, as of today, it wouldn't be ready to handle all of the world's exchange. Yeah. But in terms of like theoretically, could it happen one day? This is kind of what's more important about it. It's like I mean, and this is back to the analogy of email. Email probably. I mean, email might still not be ready to handle all of the snail mail. This is something that's evolves over time. And maybe there's one more slide here. So I think this is really, really good. You mentioned credit card fees. It's not free. Obviously, like if you're accepting Visa or MasterCard, and Visa and MasterCard have an absolute...
It's a huge cost to businesses. Like, I mean, for us, every time most people want to pay with their credit card because they want the loyalty points. And it's a huge cost to us. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so the Lightning Network is essentially free, or sometimes actually free, and settles instantly, and cross-border, instantaneous. There's no transactions are still irreversible, so that also solves that problem because credit card transactions, right? There can be a challenge
disputes
for merchants.
Or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned loyalty points too, because loyalty points are their own currency that are, it's like this is essentially managed, like Starbucks points or whatever, or air miles. All of the worst things about government currencies are 10 times worse than loyalty points because there's nothing that it's a liability that exists on Starbucks balance sheet, for example, and all they need to do to reduce that liability is change the parameters or the circulating supply of the points, what you can redeem them for. So we do really go out of our way to collect this stuff, and we have absolutely no control over what.
Or they just decide, like some of the companies have decided, just like, oh, we're going to end our points program.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying your currency is worthless.
Yeah.
And we've seen that happen a few times.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing for lots. Or they say, oh, you've got so many days to spend it. But and a lot of people, the points sometimes is very hard to understand too. Like it takes 450,000 points to fly to here to here. I thought it was a lot cheaper than that, but it's the systems are very complicated.
Yeah. And Visa fees, to get back to picking on credit cards, if you travel and they've made it easier for you to spend your credit card traveling abroad, which makes it simpler for not having to carry cash, whatever.
Correct.
But depending on where you're going, if you're traveling somewhere where the cost of items might be less because the money's were, Central America, whatever, the Visa fees can really erode into businesses' profitability, like whether they're making any money on you as a customer. And so we have seen Lightning as one example. If you look at the world map, and we have it, the world map of businesses that have identified as accepting, the number is way bigger in places like Central America and South America, where the money has been performed worse and been more volatile to the downside. So actually, if you want to just scroll up for a second, and we can look at Canada. So Vancouver is a great hub for businesses that have identified as accepting Bitcoin. There's over 100. And so that's really exciting. The number in the interior is small.
Can you drill into that one? I think is that a 5 or an 8? Can you just drill in a bit?
I think it's a 5, but I think they're in Kamloops. So right there, the one that's in West Kelowna is a bed and breakfast called Dedels, and so they will accept Bitcoin. But we're light on merchants in Kelowna, but if you go to Vancouver, there are tons of restaurants and coffee shops and bars where you can spend and do all kinds of things. And there are lots of people I know in Vancouver who actually live on Bitcoin, like they don't have a bank account.
Interesting.
But if we wanted to zoom down and look at, so that was 100 in Vancouver, city of however many million people. If you go down to Central America, like there's 800 there in, if that would be sort of El Salvador and Nicaragua. And even further south at the southern tip of Brazil there's one town that has like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And it's just something that can happen locally on its own. Again, it's not a business. So if you wanted to start accepting Lightning as a business, it's pretty simple. And all you really need to do it, other than 10 minutes of learning how to do it, are customers that want to pay in Lightning.
So you put this app on my phone, and then basically people were just paying their entry or their ticket.
Yeah.
By just scanning that code.
Yeah. So it's global money. So what's cool about it is you could spend those sats basically anywhere if you were willing to use that map and hunt down businesses that would want it.
Right.
And it's something that's, it's a number that's growing all the time. So the use case, even just for a money that you could spend anywhere in the world without needing any permission, is it's pretty interesting. And so it's basically, the development of this is totally crowdsourced. So people all over the world are working on these software protocols on their own, and it's just trying to build solutions. So basically, the original premise came out of a couple guys that were trying to spitball solutions to this seven transactions a second problem.
So there's more than Lightning, though, isn't it? There's other choices, isn't there?
Yeah, there's competing ideas.
Okay.
And it could end up that there's lots of different ideas.
Right.
And
but at the end of the day, they all end up batching out to Bitcoin itself, right?
So Saylor, who we've talked about before, Michael Saylor. Yeah. So Michael Saylor believes that the future of transactions on the base blockchain will just be banks transacting with each other, sending $10, $100 million of Bitcoin,
right,
and
settling on a settlement date or time. Yeah.
So that's more like how banks used to send gold to each other.
So they'll end up with multiple layers, kind of thing, similar to that, and then Elon Musk talks about making Twitter one of the first social platforms that's also a payment platform. And he obviously, I think Dogecoin was one of the ones he talked about earlier on, but he also had bought Bitcoin. I'm not sure if he still has it on his balance sheet or not. But
there's two pieces there. One, like Facebook explored originally having their own currency.
Oh, right, they were going to do Libra.
Yeah, and the government shut it down because these currencies could. I mean, if Facebook had their own currency, that would be a serious competitor, probably. So I don't think Twitter would have its own currency. Bitcoin is the Tesla issue with Bitcoin is a corporate accounting problem that is about to be solved. Previously, until there's some rules that are changing this year, but prior to this year, if you were a company trying to hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet, you would have to, on a quarterly basis, report the market price of Bitcoin. And if it was down, report it as a loss, even if you hadn't sold it.
Right.
So it made that would affect their earnings.
Yeah, because you could have bought a Tesla with Bitcoin at some point there. And then I think he knocked it down. You could buy some things or something like that.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of people on Twitter, Bitcoiners are huge on Twitter, and saying, tweeting Elon and saying okay, you said that this was going to change. When can we resume this Bitcoin payments, and he's been tight-lipped on it, but
he has said that he's going to do a payment system, though, that X is going to become the preeminent platform on the internet. So
I think it's like the model of what he's trying to do is like what WeChat is in China, and and that's
like the everything platform, right?
Platform.
The Swiss Army knife of social.
There's an interesting side point to all this. As I mentioned, all this stuff is sort of open source, crowdsourced development, and there's another service privacy service in cryptocurrency that's called coin joining or transaction mixing, and this is where a bunch of transactions get pushed through at the same time, so that it obscures the money that was coming in and the money that was going out. And we have seen in the last couple of weeks a massive crackdown, and some high-profile developers of this kind of software have been arrested and indicted for money laundering and fraud. And
it's like putting a mask on in the middle, kind of what you're saying, right? Like,
but the interesting thing about it is all they're really doing is enabling a basic privacy technology. So there's a big sort of sweeping regulation of something going on right now, while very few people in the world understand the significance of what's going on. And really, it comes down to this idea of, like we were talking about at the start of the episode, around being able to take money out of the bank to do whatever you want with it. We're sort of being conditioned to think that privacy is not a basic right, and that we shouldn't have privacy when it comes to spending our own money. And this is it's a big deal.
It is a big deal for many, many people.
Yeah.
And that's why they push against centralized bank digital currency.
Yeah. Yeah. So
a lot of governments are actually pushing against it too. Like I think Florida just came out and said they're all like banning it. And you know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting, I would say, 10 years to watch how this changes. The biggest commercial bank in Australia just got rid of cash entirely. And so, it's already like the cash phase out is already going on.
Yeah.
And people are willing participants, right?
I think a lot of people just don't carry cash. I rarely carry cash just because, and
it's fun though. I carry cash now, and I'll pay in cash just to see people's reactions. And it gives me this feeling that, like, it must be less than 5% of customers pay, because when you actually pull money out.
I don't think Starbucks will take cash.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they don't. I think I've been to a couple of Starbucks that will not take cash.
Yeah,
and if you go golfing at like the driving range on Ben Voolin, there can't pay with cash.
Which is in itself crazy, because it's the physical cash is legal tender. Right, and so it's
odd that they can refuse it, actually, right?
Yeah,
so,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
So that's like saying it's not legal tender. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, like, there are rules around. You can't spend $10,000 in cash. Suspicious transaction rules.
Yeah.
But when there's no cash at all, says that number could drop down to $20. And like in 2 years, $20 will be like $2 today,
or less.
So, yeah. So these things are really significant. And
well, I mean, that's one of the things that I was always curious about, is how do people start spending it? And obviously, you set this up on my phone pretty easy, so people could do it, and I guess a business could actually set one up too, and start collecting it. And then you just have to figure out how to report on it and all that kind of stuff. Right?
So all of this stuff, this is the thing, is like people who are interested in it are building all of the tools. So if you wanted to start accepting it as a business, there's an entire toolkit available online. Everything has been built, and it's just really a matter, one, I think, of people caring enough to learn about it.
Right.
And I mean, as a business, all those businesses in Vancouver say the same thing. If you, as a business owner, start accepting Bitcoin, you're really holding a flag out, and you're going to attract new customers, because there are more people interested in Bitcoin than the average person realizes. And like even yourself, right? You hosted the Bitcoin halving party. There was 40 or 50 people here.
And different. Like, it was, what surprised me the most about that was it wasn't like one, like I expected a lot of people like your age group and stuff like that, but it was a wide variety. And then, like, especially, like there's a banker and there's there's that, you know what I mean? Like it was definitely a mix.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's just a matter of, I think people are interested in tech stuff at different, with different levels of,
I was going to say, who's going to buy buy first? Will I buy an actual Bitcoin first, or will you buy a Tesla first?
I hope that it's door number one, but
there you go. There's the competition, right? Throwdown.
Yep.
Or maybe you could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin.
Who's going to crack first? I'll tell you what. I will buy a Tesla when the cost of a Tesla is 0.1 Bitcoin. There's a unit of account.
There you go. Well, 0.1, and what is that?
So that would mean 1 Bitcoin would
like
be
10% of a Bitcoin, or no, even less than that. Yeah, 10% of a Bitcoin.
Yeah. So a 600,000 Bitcoin.
I'll hold you to it.
Okay. There you go.
Well, there you go, Elon. There's your challenge. Either get the Teslas down, or get Bitcoin up.
If Elon starts accepting Bitcoin, maybe I'll be flexible on the price.
Yeah, there you go. Anything else you want to do for today?
I think that's it for today, Jim.
Awesome. You've been watching Kelowna Now with Scott Dedels, and the Block Rewards is the sponsor of the Bitcoin Show. So